Communist Party of China leads the PRC, is the most potent and dangerous near-peer adversary this nation has ever confronted.
I openly warned the American people that from my unique vantage point as an official who saw more intelligence than anyone else, I assessed that China was far and away our top national security threat.
So we're going to start by ensuring the institution understands that as far as threats abroad, the CCP is front and center.
I do believe we are in a Cold War with the Chinese Communist Party. They certainly are in one with us.
These were all Trump officials making it crystal clear that in their view, Trump is the top national security priority of the United States right now. Something to keep in mind given today's stunning reporting in the New York Times that Elon Musk, whose extensive ties to China and comments seem as favorable to Beijing are well documented, have been set to get a briefing on war plans at the Pentagon today. Let's bring in the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman, first, your reaction to the New York Times report.
You're referring to the Musk meeting in the Pentagon?
Musk being briefed on war plans for China at the Pentagon, a briefing that was reportedly called off after the New York Times published its story. And we should say that Donald Trump called, quote, fake story.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because it's not exactly clear what happened. Of course, the defense secretary and the president, everybody denied that there was any briefing on plans. And, you know, what the meeting does, and we'll need to wait to find out what was actually said. And I'll tell you, like everything else that Musk touches, this is such a lost opportunity. You know, if on January 20th, Elon Musk had said, I'm going to truly make the government efficient rather than making it a clown show as he has, he would have started at the Pentagon. Why? Because of the big ticket items that the federal government spends, Medicare, Social Security, and the Pentagon. Those are the three big ticket items. If you're really looking for efficiency, you'd start at the Pentagon. And, you know, if he'd done that deliberately and carefully and not like a clown, he could have actually done a huge service to the American people. Instead, here we have a guy who was also a defense contractor. You know, we don't let the CEO of Northrop Grumman wander the halls of the Pentagon. We have a guy who we have no reason whatsoever to believe that he will show the discipline that is required around handling classified information. And we have a guy who simply breaks things, you know, who fires the people who look after our nuclear weapons and then says, oopsie, will you guys please come back? You don't want to do that when you're talking about our war fighters and their equipment and stuff. So we need to wait to see what was actually said. But I fear that the news is not likely to be good.
Congressman, if you look at his interviews talking about China, he speaks about Taiwan as something to be, I think he used the word, quote, reunited with China. I mean, he also doesn't seem to understand U.S. national security prerogatives.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't think anybody would say that Elon Musk is an expert on American foreign policy or particularly aware of our history of you know, being strategically ambiguous about Taiwan with the Chinese. You can only imagine what the Chinese are saying when Joe Biden says 3 times that we will intervene to defend Taiwan. And now the Chinese are watching President Trump humiliate and attack Zelensky, cozy up to Putin. And, you know, his co-president, Elon Musk, is saying, oh, yeah, maybe that's okay. I mean, it just talk about making us less secure from a standpoint of not really understanding where our strategic interests lie.
I mean, you worked alongside some of these folks that are in the cabinet that came from Congress. What does it mean to Taiwan to see men like Marco Rubio, who was a hawk on Russia, totally capitulate when Trump decides to crawl under the covers and get in bed with him? How does Taiwan feel when they see men like Rubio do that?
Well, I think what Taiwan and China and Putin and Zelensky all understand now, and I think everybody understands now, is that there's only one person who matters in Washington, and all principles that might have been previously held by somebody like Marco Rubio don't matter anymore. I mean, I sit in the United States Congress, which is now fully flat on its back with the entire Republican conference in the House, with the exception of Thomas Massie, basically when Donald Trump says, put on clown shoes and jump, they say, what color shoes, sir, and how high? And that's a huge problem because our founders set up a system in which the Congress was the primary check on the power of the president. So we don't have that anymore. But to get back to your question, look, Taiwan understands, just as every other world leader understands, that the only thing that matters is whatever happens to be going through Donald Trump's brain in this particular moment.
You've used the word clown show a couple times. I wanted to deal with the serious before I dove headfirst into the clown pool. Republicans are afraid of their Republican voters. MAGA, the Republicans have given up republicanism for Trump 2.0. There's no qualms about it. There's no push and pull. If Access Hollywood broke today, there wouldn't be Republicans coming out and disavowing him or separating them. I mean, they're all into everything and anything. What does it mean in terms of the political opportunity Democrats have to talk to the country, including Republican MAGA voters, about Elon Musk's hostile takeover of the government, including bringing the FBI and D.C. police to independent agencies like the Institutes of Peace? How do you talk to the whole country right now about what's happening?
Great question, Nicole. And I'll tell you what, you don't talk about the Institute of Peace. You probably don't even, as much as it breaks my heart to see what Elon Musk did to USAID and to our soft power abroad, you don't talk about that stuff. What you do talk about is what we are about to see become a force perhaps even more powerful than Donald Trump in the Republican voters' mind. We're already seeing it, right? Because in the next 2 weeks, the Republicans are going to have to say precisely how they're going to take roughly $80 billion a year out of Medicaid without creating the absolute havoc and horror that that will do. And by the way, we're seeing this already, right? Look at any one of these Republicans that are still courageous enough to face their constituents, what you're hearing in the town hall. And the reason for that, and we're publicizing this is our mission from now on. We are going to explain to the American people what a 30% cut to Medicaid looks like and who dies because of that. We're going to explain tariffs and the fact that 3 months from now, when you go into the Ford dealership to buy that Ford Bronco, and it's now $2,000 more expensive, and the dealer explains to you that that's because of tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and when people start seeing that their meat is not being inspected by the FDA and people are getting salmonella, when Republican voters start experiencing that, you are going to see a political reaction, if I may use the president's phraseology, like you've never seen before.
And it feels like we can do this another day. I'm not going to drop the whole sort of values that America has represented around the world with USAID and starving children and Ukrainian children that have been kidnapped. I know you care about those things, but I take your point on this. Talking to the American people about what it looks like when the government goes away. I heard this from another very smart Democrat, that we're going to see what it looks like when, you know, the over-the-counter drug supply isn't safe anymore, when poultry isn't inspected anymore, when milk and meat aren't inspected anymore. How do you do both things? How do you communicate with the country that that's what happens when the federal government goes away? And how do you also, as the party in the minority, try to protect the American people and your constituents?
Well, you know, the Donald Trump and the Republicans are about to stumble into the same trap that Democrats stumbled into in the election of 2024, right? If I can sort of draw a little bit of a cartoon here, we were pounding the table on saving democracy, which is an absolutely critical thing, but it's an abstraction to most Americans, right? And Americans were saying, yeah, look, I think democracy is important and women's reproductive rights are important, but chicken costs $12 a pound. If I could summarize the election in 20 seconds, that's the way I would summarize it. The Republicans are not going to say, gosh, I love the idea of cutting the federal government and I love a more efficient government, but that Ford Bronco is $2,000 more expensive and my mom, who's in a nursing home, now doesn't have her Medicaid and is going to be living with me in my basement. So they are about to see what happens when you go from a good-sounding abstraction to real pain in real people's households. And you're going to see political numbers move, again, as Trump would put it, like you've never seen them before.